Hello and welcome. I am Nikki Soukup, Director of Public Policy and Community Relations here at the Arizona Commission for the Deaf and the Hard of Hearing. I'm joined today by Gina Roberts, who is the Voter Education Director from the Citizens for Clean Elections Commission. We are both thrilled to be with you today to provide information and resources about this year's much talked about 2024 election. Everything we're sharing today will be important to keep in mind and watch out for leading up to the election, including information about how you can get more involved in the election process. Gina has some great in-depth information to share with all of you. And after Gina's presentation, I'll share some different places you can find election information in ASL. We are both thrilled to bring you this information through the partnership between ACDHH and the Clean Elections. We are committed to making sure that everyone has access to all of the important election information, regardless of the language that you use. So for the communities that we serve, we're providing the information in ASL, spoken English, English captions, and English transcripts to make sure everyone has full access to the information. Lastly, we will open the floor for a Q&A. So I will go ahead and turn it over to Gina.
Thank you, Nikki. Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you today and provide some information on voting. As Nikki mentioned, we have a very busy election year coming up, and so we thought this would be a good time to present and share this information and also offer an opportunity for you to ask any voting questions that you may have. So as we go through this information, just make note of what your questions might be, and we're happy to help you with anything, whether it's registering to vote or how to get your ballot. We can answer any of those questions for you today. So I do have a PowerPoint, some slides here that I'll share with you, and I'm going to share my screen, and we will get to it. Okay. All right, so I am assuming everybody can see my screen, unless I'm told otherwise. But we're in the 2024 election cycle, and I wanted to share with you all just some information on what the current voter registration numbers look like for the state of Arizona. We have 5 recognized political parties. So we have the Democratic Party, the Green Party, the Libertarian Party, the No Labels Party, and the Republican Party. So anybody who registers to vote that does not select one of those parties, they're what we call an other. They're that other category, and they're the independent voters. So you can see we have a big portion of independent voters in the state of Arizona. But total, so far this year, we have about 4.1 million registered voters. So hopefully you're one of those, and if not, we can certainly talk about how to get registered if you'd like to register. All right, so what do we have coming up this year for 2024? Right now, we are actually in an election. We have the presidential preference election, which is on March 19th. So voting is currently underway. Early voting has been available. Ballots have been mailed out to voters. And if you still need to vote, you can still do so. You can go in person to an in-person early voting location, or you can show up on election day on Tuesday. The polls are going to be open from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. So what is the presidential preference election? It's an opportunity for Arizona voters to vote for their preferred party candidate for president. This year, only the Democratic and Republican parties are participating in the election. So what that means is only voters who are registered with the Democratic Party or the Republican Party can participate, can vote. So if you're a Republican or a Democrat and you're on the early voting list, you should have already received a ballot in the mail. If you don't vote by mail and you like to go in person, You have to be, again, either a Democrat or a Republican, and you can show up to the polls and you can get your ballot still. So again, that election is on Tuesday, March 19th. And if you still have an early ballot, you can definitely return it, but please don't mail it back. It's probably too late to put it in the mail to make sure that it's received by 7 p.m. on election day. So you'll want to drop that off at any voting location. So after the March 19th presidential preference election, we then have our primary to look forward to later this summer. So the primary election will be held on July 30th. All voters in Arizona can vote in the primary. That includes our independent voters. I know there's sometimes confusion about whether or not an independent voter can vote in primaries. They can. So in our July 30th primary, independents can vote. But I'm going to take a step back now and go back to that March 19th presidential preference election that we're in right now. Independents cannot vote in it. So just a reminder, it's going to be only Democrats and Republicans who can vote in the election we're in now on Tuesday, March 19th. But when we fast forward to this summer for our July 30th primary, independents can vote. So the purpose of a primary election is for voters to select the party nominees who will advance to the general election. So those recognized parties that I talked about a few slides ago, so let's say the Republican Party, the purpose of the primary on July 30th is for Republican voters and independents that want to vote the Republican ballot to select all of the nominees from the Republican Party. So let's say there's two Republicans vying against one another, competing against one another to become the official nominee. You'll vote on them on that primary ballot. And then the winner will advance to the general election. And that's where they'll compete against all of the other party nominees and independent candidates. So that takes us to our November 5th general election. On the general election ballot, again, all voters can vote in it. And the purpose is to actually now elect the candidates to office. So all of those party nominees that came from that primary election, we're now voting on them to finally elect them into office. We will also see presidential electors on the ballot. So it's a presidential election year. So when you get your November 5th general election ballot, at the top of it, you're going to see the presidential candidates along with their electors on it. So you'll be voting for those presidential electors, which is a part of the Electoral College. So that's what we've got going on this year. A lot of elections happening, a lot of opportunities for you as voters to get involved. And again, our purpose here is to share the information with you so you know how to participate in those elections if you want to vote. So what's on the ballot specifically? As we talked about with the March 19th election, presidential preference election, again, it's the candidates who want to be the official presidential nominee for their party. So if you're a Republican or a Democrat, you would get your party's ballot. You would see a list of names of all of the candidates for that party that want to be the official nominee, and that's what you're voting on. In the primary, we're going to be voting on the party nominees for U.S. Senate. We have an open U.S. Senate seat since current Senator Kyrsten Sinema is not running again. So we have the U.S. Senate, and then we have all of our 9 congressional districts. So that's Congress. And then we have our corporation commissioners. That's a state office, and it's going to be a vote for 3. So you have corporation commissioner. Then we have our state legislature. We have 30 legislative districts in Arizona. In each legislative district, we have 1 senator and 2 representatives. So you'll be voting on state legislature. And then we have local offices. So there could be additional local offices such as school board or city council or mayor. So there's going to be more local offices as well on your primary ballot. Then when we get to the November 5th general election, you'll see again those presidential electors at the top. And then again, we'll have all of those party nominees that advanced from the primary election to the general election. So again, you'll vote on those same offices to actually elect them into office. So U.S. Senate, Congress, Corporation Commissioner, state legislature, and local offices. One thing I did not put on here that you'll also see on the ballot are the propositions. So you'll see ballot measures like Proposition 100, Proposition 200. You'll see all of those ballot measures too. And then you'll also see judges and justices. So our November 5th ballot gets pretty big. It gets pretty long. And you're going to see all of those judges and justices on your ballot too that are up for retention. So again, a lot of opportunities and a lot of decisions for your vote this fall. So the first step in participating is registering to vote. So that's your very first step in activating your political power. And you can get registered to vote one of two ways. You can register online. The website is servicearizona.com. Or you can register with a paper form. You can either print a paper form from that website, or you can get one at your local library, or you can even call Clean Elections, and I'd be happy to mail you one. So the qualifications to get registered to vote in Arizona: you have to be a citizen. You have to be a resident of the state and of the county that you live in 29 days prior to the election. You have to be 18. And you have to be able to write your name or make your mark unless prevented by a disability. So those are the qualifications. Now, you are not able to register to vote if you have been adjudicated an incapacitated person, or if you've been convicted of a treason or a felony, unless you've had your civil rights restored. In Arizona, if you're a first-time felon, your civil rights are automatically restored upon completion of your sentence and once you've paid any fines or restitution fees that you may have. So again, you can register to vote online or fill out that paper form, and you'll want to do that at least 29 days before the election because that's going to be the deadline. So once you're registered, now you get to decide, how do you want to vote? What's your preferred method of voting? And the great thing about Arizona is you have lots of options. You can decide, do I want to vote early by mail? If that's the case, then that early voting period begins 27 days before the election. So 27 days before the election, the county is going to automatically mail out ballots to every voter who is on the early voting list or has made a one-time request for an early ballot. When you get your ballot and you vote it, it's very important that you sign that affidavit envelope that comes with your ballot. Your ballot will not be counted unless your signature is on there. The reason why is because your signature is how the county confirms your identity. So every voter, regardless of how they vote, they have to prove identity. And when you're voting by mail, your signature does that. So it's very important to sign that envelope. So once you've voted and you've signed your envelope, you have to get your ballot back to the county by 7 p.m. on election day. You can either mail it back, postage is prepaid, and we recommend you mail it at least a week before election day to make sure the post office can get it there in time. Or you can drop it off at any voting location in your county or drop box. And you can find those locations on the Clean Elections website. We'll talk about special election boards in a little bit. I'm going to save that one. But one thing to remember is when you're voting by mail, when you have your ballot, only certain people can legally be in possession of your ballot. So you, the voter, your family members, your household members, or caregivers can be in possession of a voter's ballot. So those are the folks, if you want to ask somebody to return your ballot for you, those are the folks that you can ask. So maybe you decide you want to vote early, but just not by mail. You can vote early in person. Same time period, 27 days before the election. This time, your physical ID is required. So you do have to show ID to the poll workers. Voting locations, regardless of if they're an early voting location or an on election day voting location, they all are required to have accessible voting equipment set up and ready for use. So you have options when you go to that physical voting location. If you need any assistance, you can tell the poll worker. And they have bipartisan teams available that can assist you in voting. And they have other resources available too. Sometimes that's curbside voting, where you don't even have to get out of your vehicle, or it's magnifying sheets or other available resources. So you would just talk to the poll worker and let them know if you need any assistance. Then we have election day voting. So maybe you like to show up on election day, it's exciting, and you want to vote on election day itself. So the polls are open from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. Again, ID is required because every voter has to show identification. And you'll want to know where to go. That's really important because if you live in a county, let's say Pinal County, for example, they have assigned polling locations. So you have to go to your assigned polling place in Pinal County. But if you live in Maricopa County, they have vote centers, and you can go to any vote center that you want to get your ballot. So it's really important you know where to go, and you can look that up on the Clean Elections website just by entering in your address, and we can tell you. Just like before with early voting, all voting locations must have accessible voting equipment set up and ready for use. And again, those same resources are going to be available if you need any assistance in voting. So there's two other options that I wanted to share for voters. We do have something called emergency early voting. So in-person early voting ends at 7 p.m. the Friday before the election. After that time period, let's say the Saturday before the election, emergency early voting is available. So let's say you suddenly find yourself in the hospital, or you have, a legitimate emergency that prevents you from going to the polls on Tuesday. You can contact your county and you can tell them you have an emergency, and they can advise you on how you can vote. The other option is counties have a special election board. These are boards where if you're physically unable to go to a voting location, the county can send out these special election boards directly to you. So it'll be a bipartisan team, and they'll bring your ballot directly to you so you can vote it. And then they'll take it back and return it for you. If you need to use either the emergency early voting option or the special election boards, you'll want to contact your county as soon as possible to explain that to them so they can advise you further. So those are the basics of voting, such as voter registration and your options on how to vote. Some of the resources that Clean Elections provides to help you make your decisions on what you're actually voting for, so the candidates and the issues. We're going to send you a voter education guide directly to your mailbox before the primary and the general election. And we have those in different formats. We'll automatically send them in English and Spanish, but we also have large print available. We're going to hopefully be working with the Commission for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing to produce an American Sign Language version of the voter guide. We translate them into some tribal languages such as Navajo, Apache, and Hopi. And we also offer plain text, so that it will work with screen readers. And then we also partner with Sun Sounds of Arizona, where they'll read an audio version of the voter guide too. We also host debates. That way you can see what the candidates think about the issues that are important to you. And we broadcast those. And when we're broadcasting them, when possible, we're going to include American Sign Language in a box on the screen. And we'll have captions for them. And then for our legislative debates, we stream those on YouTube, and we'll provide captions as well too. And then our website. Our website is an amazing resource for voters that provides a ton of information, from everything you need to know about the voting process, to learning what's on your ballot, to learning about the candidates, even learning about how your ballot is kept safe. So our website is user-friendly and it's accessible, and we have a lot of information on there for voters to guide them through their process. So that covers voter registration, it covers the elections we have coming up, how to vote, and then those resources provided by Clean Elections. So now we'll turn it over to Nikki, and she can talk about some of the resources available for voters when it comes to accessibility. And I will stop sharing my screen. And again, after Nikki speaks, then we can jump into questions, Q&A.
Thank you, Gina. That was amazing information that all of us can benefit from to become more informed voters. And we can share that information with other voters as well. So thank you. I wanted to take a moment to share some information about where people can find more information about voting in American Sign Language. I mentioned that ACDHH and the Clean Elections Commission partnered to translate their written information from English to ASL. Clean Elections now has those ASL videos on their website and social media. For example, they have what's called the voter registration guide. And in that guide, you'll find explanations for the voting process, as well as a list of candidates running this year in the local, state, and federal elections. All of the information that you need is in one place. And we had CDIs translate that guide, which you can watch in videos on Clean Elections website and on their YouTube. ACDHH also provides links to those videos as well, so you can take a look and get more information there. The ACDHH website also has many resources about the election. There's information about general voting, about how to register to vote, links to other websites. And there's also a national project, I guess you would call it. It is called Sign Vote. It was originally created by CSD, but it is now run by the Center for Democracy in Deaf America at Gallaudet University. They are continuously updating and adding to the information on their website, which is signvote.org. The Clean Elections website is azcleanelections.gov. And of course, our website is acdhh.org. ACDHH will continue to share those websites on our social media as well as on our website. So those are a few different places where there is information already up and running and accessible that people can use. We also encourage you to keep an eye out for live events. For example, AZPBS will host a live election panel with CDI interpretation on screen. And it's my understanding that they will also have a live in-person interpreter during that event, as well as CDI interpretation for the people watching at home. So definitely keep an eye peeled for information about those events. And of course, ACDHH will continue to share information about upcoming events on our social media and our e-news, so make sure to subscribe for that. Clean Elections is hosting live debates as well for the candidates who are running in various areas. 2 years ago, Clean Elections hosted the senatorial debate, where we did have CDI interpretation on screen, which was amazing. So keep an eye out for more events like that during this year's election. Oh, yes, there is also one other organization in Arizona that you should be aware of. It is run by Disability Rights Arizona, the Protection and Advocacy Voting Coalition. Just looking at my notes here. It is called the Arizona Disability Voter Coalition. So if you want more information about how to get involved, you can contact that coalition or reach out to us here at ACDHH and we can share information with you as well. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. You can email us at any time. With no further ado, we will now open the floor for our Q&A.
This discussion will be available afterwards. So please share it with your friends, with your family, with your network. That way we can help spread the word about voting and encourage people to get out and vote and make sure they have all of the information that they need. So again, if there's any questions, we're happy to answer those right now. But if not, you can certainly email us after. You can check out our websites, all the resources that Nikki said about, and we're here for you to help you through the voting process. But again, please share this information with your community so we can help educate voters. Great question. And the answer is there are a lot of procedures in place to make sure every vote is processed and tabulated. So what that means is, let's go back to those voting options. If you voted by mail, you can track the status of your ballot. So you can track and confirm that the county received your ballot back, they verified your signature, and they tabulated your ballot. When you vote on election day, depending on which county you vote in, you may be able to actually submit your ballot through the tabulation machine, through the voting machine. Or some counties actually take those ballots back to their election central location, and they tabulate them on high-speed tabulation machines. But as I mentioned, there's a lot of processes and policies in place to ensure every ballot gets tabulated. We have audits that are done, hand counts. The political parties have observers who monitor the process, and you as voters can actually go online and you can watch a live feed of all of the tabulation rooms across all 15 counties. So you can see what's occurring in the tabulation room. And the counties have to perform checks and balances procedures. So for example, they know how many ballots are going out at each location. They know how many are being voted. They keep track of any ballots that are rejected. So for example, if they couldn't verify a voter's signature, it couldn't be processed. If it was missing a signature, that early ballot, they have to keep track of all of those. And so they have to perform audits of all of that information. And again, political party observers are present to monitor all of this. And the machines go through testing too, to make sure that they are tabulating correctly. And the machines are never connected to the internet. And so that's another mechanism to keep them safe. So there's a lot of procedures in place to protect your vote. We do have information on the Clean Elections website that goes through this in more detail. So if you want more information on that, you can certainly look that up. But again, there are a lot of Arizona laws that are in place that the counties have to follow to make sure that your ballot is counted.
You know, kind of in line with that question, you know, they asked it mostly because of what happened in Cochise County recently or previously. So
yes, so there has been discussion among County Board of Supervisors about hand counting every individual ballot. And so I'm not sure if that's what's being referenced here. Earlier, I had used the term canvas. So what that means is after the counties have tabulated all the votes and performed all of their checks and balances procedures, they have to go before the County Board of Supervisors. And the County Board of Supervisors votes to officially accept those results. That's what canvassing the election means. So I know that there was involvement with the Cochise County Board of Supervisors and whether or not they were going to canvass the election. And there's been discussion with the Secretary of State's office and the Attorney General's office about can a board even do that? So that's more of a legal and policy discussion. But I think at the end of the day, the counties are performing their duties in accordance, the county recorders and county elections offices are performing their duties in accordance with all of those different procedures in place to protect your vote. So I know there's still ongoing discussions about the role of county supervisors when it comes to canvassing the election. But I think at the end of the day, all of those, Arizona law does have those mechanisms in place to protect your vote. Great question. So propositions make their way on the ballot in two ways. The first is the legislature or the governing body of the jurisdiction, so maybe a city council. They can put items on the ballot for voters to consider. So those could be a referendum that the legislature refers to the ballot for voters to consider. The other way is through voters directly, through a citizens initiative. So Arizona has laws that allow for citizens to directly create legislation through the citizens initiative process. So they have to circulate petitions and ask voters for their signatures. And if they get enough signatures, then their proposition will qualify for placement on the ballot. And then voters have the opportunity to vote on that. So every year we see propositions coming from both ways, either from the legislature referring it to the ballot or from the citizens initiative or even a citizens recall of trying to recall a currently sitting elected official. So we'll see propositions from the state level and at the local level. So you could see a proposition, coming from the state legislature, citizens initiatives for the state to consider, or you could see it where it's only applicable to a city. So maybe a city council referred a measure just for their city voters, or maybe city residents decided they didn't like something that their city council approved and they want the voters to consider it. So they're referring that measure back to the ballot. So these measures are being placed on the ballot either through the governing body or through citizens voters directly.
Awesome. That's a great way for citizens to get involved, in the election process and the civic process as it is. It is our state. It's great that we can be involved.
And, if I could, that makes me think, Nikki, just talking about petitions, right now we're in the candidate filing period where candidates have to file their petitions to qualify to get their name printed on the ballot. And voters, you have the opportunity to actually digitally sign petitions for candidates through the state's system called Equal. So that's an opportunity to get involved and potentially support a candidate of your choosing. And you could do it from the comfort of your own home. And we have links to the Equal system on the Clean Elections website.
That's great. I'm so glad you thought of that just now, because that's something that's really good to share with the community.
Well, again, even if you don't have questions now, you still have our contact information. So please feel free to stay in touch with any questions you may have. Please share this recording with your family, friends, and your community. And thank you so much for your time. And thank you to the Arizona Commission for the Deaf of Hard of Hearing for supporting this and making time for this event. And thank you to the voters for tuning in. And we hope you have the information that you need to get out and vote. And again, feel free to stay in touch so we can support you as we go through this election year. Thank you for your time today.